The morning of December 7, 1941 changed everything. As Japanese bombers descended on Pearl Harbor, America faced a harsh reality. We were unprepared for the industrial-scale warfare that would define the next 4 years. But what happened next would showcase the greatest mobilization of technology and human resources in history. Within months, automobile factories were producing tanks instead of cars. Shipyards were launching vessels at unprecedented rates. American ingenuity was creating weapons that would help win not just one, but 2 world wars. This isn't just the story of machines. It's the story of the heroes who designed, built, and wielded them. Today we'll explore how American military technology and the extraordinary people behind it transformed the United States from an isolationist nation into what President Roosevelt called the arsenal of democracy. From the factory floors of Detroit to the laboratories of Los Alamos, from the skies over Europe to the waters of the Pacific, we'll discover how innovation and courage combined to change the course of world history forever. The German Panzer seemed unstoppable in 1942. Their Tiger tanks outgunned and outarmored everything the Allies could field. But American engineers had a different philosophy. Instead of building the heaviest, most complex tank, they created the M4 Sherman. The Sherman wasn't the best tank of the war, but it was reliable, maintainable, and produced in staggering numbers. General Crichton Abrams, who would later lead the entire U.S. Army, understood this perfectly. As a tank commander in Europe, Abrams knew that the Sherman's real strength wasn't its 75mm gun or its 30-ton frame. It was America's to build 49,000 of them. While Germany managed to produce only 1,347 Tiger tanks during the entire war, American factories churned out Shermans at a rate of 37-1. This wasn't just mass production, it was mass innovation. Sherman tanks were constantly upgraded, modified in the field, and adapted for dozens of specialized roles. Behind every Sherman was a crew of 5 Americans who learned that victory didn't come from having the perfect weapon, but from having enough good weapons properly maintained with crews trained to use them effectively. In 1943, American bombers flying over Europe were being shot down faster than they could be replaced. The problem was simple. No Allied fighter had the range to escort bombers all the way to their targets and back. The solution came from an unlikely marriage of American innovation and British engineering. The P-51 Mustang combined the best American airframe design with the powerful British Merlin engine. The result was arguably the finest fighter aircraft of World War II. With a range of 1,650 miles using drop tanks, the Mustang could escort bombers to Berlin and back, something no other Allied fighter could achieve. Colonel Don Blakesley of the 4th Fighter Group proved the Mustang's worth in combat. His pilots shot down more enemy aircraft than any other fighter group in Europe. But the Mustang's real contribution wasn't just shooting down German fighters. It was making strategic bombing possible by providing protection for the bombers that would ultimately cripple German industry. Over 15,000 Mustangs were built, and they didn't just win air superiority. They redefined what air superiority meant. The sight of Mustang formations over German skies told friend and foe alike that America had arrived in force. The B-29 Superfortress was the most technologically advanced aircraft of its era. Pressurized cabins allowed crews to operate at altitudes above 30,000 feet. Remote-controlled gun turrets provided defense without exposing gunners to the elements. Advanced navigation systems enabled precision bombing from distances that seemed impossible. But the B-29 was also the most expensive weapons program of World War II after the Manhattan Project. Each aircraft cost more than a destroyer. The technology was so advanced, that early models suffered from numerous mechanical problems. General Curtis LeMay transformed the B-29 from a troubled experimental aircraft into a war-winning weapon. LeMay revolutionized strategic bombing doctrine, developed new formation tactics, and personally led missions to prove his strategies worked. Each B-29 carried a crew of 11 men on missions lasting up to 16 hours over enemy territory. These weren't just bombing runs, they were technological expeditions. Flight engineers monitored dozens of complex systems, while navigators used radar and celestial navigation to find targets thousands of miles from home. The B-29's 20,000-pound bomb load and 31,850-foot service ceiling gave America the ability to strike any target in the world. When the war ended, it was B-29s that delivered the final blow. Henry J. Kaiser revolutionized shipbuilding with a simple question: why does it take 6 months to build a ship when we could do it in 6 weeks? His Liberty ships became the backbone of Allied logistics, carrying 75% of American cargo across hostile oceans. The numbers tell an incredible story. Over 2,700 Liberty ships were built during the war. The fastest was completed in just 4 days and 15 hours, a record that stands today. These weren't just ships. They were floating symbols of American industrial might. But the real miracle was the workforce that built them. Rosie the Riveter wasn't just a poster. She represented millions of American women who entered shipyards, aircraft factories, and munitions plants. They operated complex machinery, maintained production schedules, and kept the arsenal of democracy running. The Red Ball Express exemplified American logistics innovation. After D-Day, this truck convoy system moved 12,500 tons of supplies daily using 6,000 trucks. The drivers, primarily African-American soldiers, worked around the clock to keep Allied armies advancing when German commanders expected supply shortages to stop them. This was American industry at its finest, not just building weapons, but building them faster and in greater quantities than any nation in history had ever achieved. Henry J. Kaiser revolutionized shipbuilding with a simple question: why does it take 6 months to build a ship when we could do it in 6 weeks? His Liberty ships became the backbone of Allied logistics, carrying 75% of American cargo across hostile oceans. The numbers tell an incredible story. Over 2,700 Liberty ships were built during the war. The fastest was completed in just 4 days and 15 hours, a record that stands today. These weren't just ships. They were floating symbols of American industrial might. But the real miracle was the workforce that built them. Rosie the Riveter wasn't just a poster. She represented millions of American women who entered shipyards, aircraft factories, and munitions plants. They operated complex machinery, maintained production schedules, and kept the arsenal of democracy running. The Red Ball Express exemplified American logistics innovation. After D-Day, this truck convoy system moved 12,500 tons of supplies daily using 6,000 trucks. The drivers, primarily African-American soldiers, worked around the clock to keep Allied armies advancing when German commanders expected supply shortages to stop them. This was American industry at its finest, not just building weapons, but building them faster and in greater quantities than any nation in history had ever achieved. Some of America's greatest contributions to victory were invisible. Radar technology, perfected by scientists like Dr. Luis Alvarez, reduced Allied aircraft losses by 70%. It enabled night operations, all-weather flying, and early warning systems that gave Allied forces crucial advantages. The proximity fuse represented electronics decades ahead of its time. Dr. Merle Tuvey's team at Johns Hopkins created artillery shells that could sense when they were near targets and explode automatically. This increased anti-aircraft effectiveness by 500% and was so secret it wasn't used over land until D-Day. The Manhattan Project brought together 130,000 workers across multiple sites in the greatest scientific undertaking in history. Under J. Robert Oppenheimer's leadership, teams of physicists, engineers, and technicians created weapons that would end the war and reshape international relations forever. Perhaps the most elegant secret weapon was the Navajo Code Talkers. Chester Nez and 400 other Native American Marines used their indigenous languages to create unbreakable military communications. In 4 years of warfare, Japanese code breakers never successfully decoded a single Navajo transmission. These secret weapons shared one common trait. They gave American forces capabilities that enemies couldn't match or even fully understand. The technologies developed during World War II didn't just win a war, they transformed the world. Radar became air traffic control systems. Jet engines revolutionized transportation. Computer technology, first developed for artillery calculations, evolved into the digital age that defines our modern world. But the real legacy isn't technological, it's human. America proved that free societies, when threatened, could mobilize resources and creativity on scales that totalitarian regimes couldn't match. The factory worker in Detroit, the engineer in California, the pilot over Germany, the sailor in the Pacific, each played an essential role in victory. Today's military technology traces its origins directly to World War II innovations. Stealth aircraft embody lessons learned from the P-51 Mustang. Modern logistics systems still follow principles established by the Red Ball Express. Precision weapons evolved from the proximity fuse technology developed 80 years ago. The men and women who created these technologies and wielded them in combat understood something fundamental. Victory belongs not to those with the most sophisticated weapons, but to those who can innovate fastest, adapt quickest, and fight with the greatest determination for the principles they believe in. This is why we study these heroes and their machines, not to glorify war, but to understand how ordinary Americans, when faced with extraordinary challenges, created the technologies and demonstrated the courage that preserved freedom for future generations. Their legacy continues to inspire and protect us today.